There are lots of different tools that you can use to do a semantic analysis or a text analysis of a PDF that you're looking at. This can be really helpful if you're unsure about the definition of some words, what they're actually saying in the text, or to get sometimes a summary of main points, key takeaways, or even limitations of a study. The tools that are available on the web vary in how good they are and how much they cost. So I'm going to show you how to use one of the AI tools already available to you as an ISU student to do a text analysis of a scholarly article. I have the article I want to look at right here. So the first thing to do is to download the article or find the full text that I can pull up on my web browser. You'll want to be using Edge because that has the Copilot built into it, and you're going to use the web browser as your screen to analyze this text. So here is my full text of my article. The other way that you can do this is to try and find the full text online in more of an Adobe Reader or PDF format. Okay. So here's my article pulled up, 2 different ways to do that. The next thing you'll do is to click on Copilot, and you'll want to make sure that you're logged in to your ISU Microsoft account. That's just your same ISU credentials that you use to log into everything else on campus. When you're approaching a text and you're hoping to do some text analysis of it, remember the techniques that we taught you about which sections to look at first in an article in order to get a good idea of what it's about first before trying to dive too deeply into it right off the bat. So the first section you'll want to look at is the abstract. Ideally, there shouldn't be too much in the abstract that you need help with analyzing, because the abstract should give you a general summary that almost anyone can understand. If you're having trouble with that, again, you might want to pick a different article. After you get a good idea of what the whole thing should be about in the abstract, where you might use your text analysis the most is in the methods section or in the discussion or results sections. So let's bump down to the methods section. Okay. So just looking at the second paragraph here, there's a sentence that goes, using the results of the observational study, we undertook biomechanical analyses. Previous studies have shown that angular head velocity and therefore also angular displacement and acceleration during head oscillation and pitch are approximately sinusoidal. So let's say I'm not understanding a lot of the words in this sentence. So I'm going to highlight that text in my PDF, and you can either hit Control-C or Command-C if you're on an Apple, and then try pasting it over here into the window for Copilot and say something like, explain this text. So in doing this, Copilot has highlighted some of the sentences that I initially pasted in and said explain to me, and it's given its explanation in the unbolded text. So in addition to looking at the results here that Copilot gives us and analyzing and double checking those, there's a few other things you can do. Sometimes this automated prompt will come up, answer from this page instead. And if your answer that you're getting from Copilot isn't really related or isn't related enough to the text that you've copied from your PDF, you can click this one instead, and that will narrow Copilot's focus to just what's on that web page, the PDF. And sometimes that can get you a better answer if you're getting kind of weird results. In this response, Copilot has actually given me a little bit of a reference. And if you click on that, it takes you to where in the text it got that information. So you can at least verify that it's pulling from the right location. If you hadn't selected the text and pasted in a chunk and you were asking it to summarize the text or give you the limitations of the study, this little technique might be better, because then it will show you ideally where within the article it was pulling the answer that it gave you in that text. So let's give that a try. So what are the main takeaways from this study? So you can see the reference that it's given me here is bmj.com, which is the website that my PDF is hosted on. And it's given me some numbers here that should correspond to the parts of the article that it says tell it that. So let's click on one. So here are the main takeaways from the study on headbanging and injury risks. Injury risks. Headbanging to heavy metal music can cause mild traumatic brain injury and neck injury, especially at higher tempos and greater ranges of motion. So the highlighted text that it has directed me to says, to investigate the risks of mild traumatic brain injury and neck injury associated with headbanging, a popular dance form accompanying heavy metal music. So in this little snippet that it's pointed me to, it is being accurate with this mild traumatic brain injury and neck injury, but this little chunk that it's highlighted hasn't said anything about the tempo of the music. So that's something to be aware of. If you're getting additional information in the Copilot answer that you're not seeing in the highlighted text, make a note of that and see if it occurs later if it's true. I know because I've looked at this article that it is true in this case, but it's interesting that it did not mention that in this part, but it's including it in here. Let's see these 2 and 3. So 2 says, popular songs. The average headbanging song has a tempo of 146 beats per minute, which can cause injuries if the head and neck motion exceeds 75 degrees. The highlighted portion of my PDF says, these songs had an average tempo of 146 beats per minute, accurate, and this tempo, we predict the headbanging can cause headaches and dizziness, dazed and confused, if the range of movement of the head and neck is greater than 75 degrees. So in this case, direct quotation of what's in this article, accurate. Let's check the 4th one. Copilot says prevention tips to minimize injury risks. Headbangers should reduce the range of motion, headbang to slower tempo songs, or use personal protective equipment. And the highlighted portion of my text is the conclusion, which is in the abstract, and it says, to minimize the risk of head and neck injury, headbangers should decrease the range of head and neck motion, mentioned in Copilot. Headbang to slower tempo songs by replacing heavy metal with adult-oriented rock, accurate in my Copilot. Or only headbang to every second beat, or use personal protective equipment. So it got most of what was in the conclusion from the abstract, but it did neglect the headbanging to every other beat. So you can see in some instances Copilot will add or leave out certain things from its highlighted text. So that's why you always need to double check it and see, is it giving you accurate information? Is it giving you complete information? In addition to highlighting text, you can highlight sometimes graphs, charts, and equations. So for example, say I'm having trouble understanding this particular equation right here. If I highlight it, and then paste. So in this case, it got enough out of what I pasted in there to give me the full equation written out again. And it's broken down each of the variables within this equation to tell me a little bit more about them, in case this is not something that I usually encounter in my research, or I'm not familiar with this equation at all. So some of these things Copilot does very well. For the most part, you can trust the definitions. However, it's always a good idea to verify that through an external source, or by going back to your original text and seeing if that makes sense for the context that is in an article. So does what they're telling me it means make sense in the context of the article as a whole? Overall, that's how you would use Copilot to help you with analyzing the text of a PDF article.